Let's talk about how to play the Vaesen RPG online. Vaesen is a Nordic horror RPG published by Free League. The players investigate mysteries involving mythical creatures called Vaesen, although it's often the humans that are at the root of the problem. Vaesen uses the D6 dice pool-based Year Zero engine that's also used in Tales from the Loop and other Free League games. Just a quick warning, there might be some mild spoilers for one of the included adventures here, but I won't go into a lot of detail. A couple months ago, I published a video with a brief overview of several virtual tabletops, or VTTs. I also expressed a general preference for playing without a VTT, for example, using Discord and Google Sheets, although I'll continue to use VTT for certain games. Well, I'm about to start a Vaesen RPG campaign, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to look at a couple options for Vaesen specifically. I'm going to demo the Vaesen support for Foundry and Alchemy, and briefly mention a few other VTTs. I'll also show a non-VTT option. So let's get started with Foundry VTT. Free League seems to have chosen Foundry as their preferred VTT. You can buy Foundry versions of pretty much all their games and supplements directly in the Free League web store, and they sometimes offer them as part of a Kickstarter reward as well. That means that the system is officially supported, and I can expect a reasonable level of polish. Okay, so here I have a fresh Foundry world where I've added the Vaesen system, the core game content, as well as the Wicked Secret Mysteries book. I've also added some of my favorite Foundry modules, such as Dice So Nice. So I'm going to show off just a couple of things about the Vaesen support here. To start with, let's go over to the Scenes tab. As you can tell, there's a nice default scene that I've loaded up right here. The core Vaesen system also comes with this Mythic North map. Let's look at that real quick. Zoom out, right? So here we see the whole map that Vaesen takes place in, the so-called Mythic North. If we zoom in a bit more, down here, for example, there's Uppsala, which is where the character's headquarters is. And we can also look at Uppsala in a bit more detail. So here's a nice little city map. Up here we see the Castle Gillenkreuz that serves as the headquarters for the PCs. Down here is, I think, let's see, is it 7? Yeah, 7 is the Uppsala Asylum. So that's where they initially meet Linnea Elfaclint or something like that. That kind of introduces them to the so-called society and kind of seeds the first adventure that they might go on. So that's this. Then you'll see A Wicked Secret and Other Mysteries. That is the first adventure book that was published for Vaesen. It comes with 4 individual mysteries. You can kind of play them in any order or string them together into a campaign. You can see there's a slight variation of the Mythic North map here. It's the same map, but if we enable the journal notes, they've actually highlighted all the places where the adventures take place. So here, for example, that's the first adventure that I'm likely gonna run. This is the Silver of the Sea, and down here is I can get to my GM notes. I need to be a little bit careful here because my players might actually be watching this. And I can open this, and here's a description of the adventure. If I click on this, I can quickly get to the handout that I can show the players, the invitation that they receive, which kind of kicks everything off. So that's kind of nice. And then there's one folder for each of the mysteries. So here is, again, the Silver of the Sea. There's a map of the archipelago. There's a map of an inn. And there's another map of a region on one of the islands here. All right, let's keep this one loaded for now. And now we can look at some of the characters. So let's start with the core game. You can tell there's a lot of NPCs already loaded up for creatures and Vaesen and things like that. So if I need to, say, have them fight a bear, I could pull up the bear, right? Or I can drag the token to the map. And now I have a bear on the map that they can fight. And of course, there's the Vaesen. Don't want to spoil too much here, but let's click on a troll, for example, right? And you see all the stats, including the different conditions that they can cycle through as characters attack them, which usually isn't the way to defeat the Vaesen, by the way. And there's a couple other things, a bunch of NPCs that you might use, like a soldier or a farmer or something like that. So those are nice and handy to have. There's also the headquarters, Castle Gillenkreuz. So that one's right here. The castle basically has its own character sheet, and the players can actually upgrade it over time in between mysteries by spending points on it. And those give them certain advantages later on. So that's kind of a nice domain building game, I guess, a little bit. So looking forward to getting into that. So there's a nice character sheet here. Let's go into the Wicked Secret again. Once more, there's a subfolder for each of the mysteries. And in there, we have a couple of NPCs. Here's kind of a generic sailor archetype, or a couple of the specific ones. So I'll close this. Again, my players might watch this, but it's all nice and tidy. Let's see what it looks like to create a player character. So I can create an actor. Let's call this one, say, Gunilla Eriksson, and this is going to be a player actor. So we'll create this character. Let's say that Gunilla is a writer. So one of the Vaesen archetypes. Foundry, or rather the Foundry Vaesen content actually comes with some nice assets. So we can go over here and pull up the tokens. And there's one for each of the archetypes. Most likely, depending on, how you envision your character, what age, what gender, and whatnot, you'll probably want to upload your own portrait. But it is nice to have a couple of default options in here. So I'm going to load up the writer. All right, there's our writer. Okay, now I could fill in all of these fields like motivation and trauma, dark secret. I'll just add a couple of attributes for now so we can test out some die rolls. So let's say she has a physique of 3 and a logic of 4 and agility 1. Close combat 2. Let's do investigation 3. And maybe we'll do precision 2 and medicine 1. I don't know, just to have a couple of fields in here. You can also see there's a nice place where we can check off conditions. I'll show this a little bit later. And then you have all the combat information, weapons, and so on, which she doesn't have right now, but I could add some talents, gear, and a nice place to take notes. So it's a really nice functional character sheet. Let's try out a role actually while we're in here. So I'm going to switch back to the chat where the role results are going to show up. Let's do a agility roll, for example. So all I need to do is click on this. The way Vaesen works is you basically add your attribute, so physique in this case, and the skill agility together. So this is 4. That means I'm going to roll 4 d6s in my dice pool, and any die that comes up as 6 is considered a success. And most of the time you only need 1 success. So let's roll. All right, so, and note, by the way, this is the Dice So Nice module, and actually there's a nice custom dice set that comes with this, with the sort of Vaesen dice. Actually, if you bought the physical ones, they look just like that. They're really pretty. So in this case, there are no successes, which gives me the opportunity to demonstrate pushing. So on Vaesen, you can push a roll, which basically means that you accept a condition, either a physical condition or a mental condition, and in return, you get to re-roll any of the failed dice. So let's say she is just going to push through, right? And whatever hypothetical situation we're dealing with here, and she's just going to take a exhausted condition as a result. Now I can click on push, and it just re-rolls the dice, and look at that, now we got a success. So this is all nicely integrated. Let's do one more die roll, maybe a medicine roll, and now we see I'm rolling on medicine, which is also a physical skill. It falls under the precision attribute. Now, since I've taken a physical condition, that means that all of my physical die rolls are subject to a -1 modifier. So you can see the -1 here, and it automatically applies that. So as long as this condition is checked, that will continue to apply. I'm going to roll, so I only get 2 dice instead of the 3 that I would normally get, but I still managed to get a success. So that's the die rolling, works really well. Let's show off items to see how I could add something to a character. So under items, again, it's the usual structure. I have the core game, and then I have a separate folder for the campaign book. So in the core game, for example, we have things like armor, equipment, melee weapons, ranged weapons, and so on. So let's say that she actually has a, what are we going to give her? Maybe a sword or a saber. So I'm just going to drag that in here, and it shows up in the right place with the damage and everything filled in. We can also apply talents the same way. So as a writer, she would typically start with one of the writer talents. So let's just give her the journalist one. So it puts all the information here. And then maybe later on, she will acquire a, how about famous? She could be a famous writer. And here we go. Nice and easy. And there are also some items that are specific to the Wicked Secret mystery. So you can get to those up here. I also want to look at the journal. There's a couple different things in here. One is, this is literally the whole text of the Vaesen book. So everything is in here. Say skill descriptions, if I wanted to look at how do skill tests work, that's all in here, and I can page through this. I can look at the skill definitions and so on. And then if we look at the mystery, it's essentially the same deal. So I could pull up the whole book here and look through all of the different mysteries, have the whole text in here. I could pull up the Silver of the Sea specifically for this one mystery. And then my handouts live here as well. So for the Silver of the Sea, there's the island map, essentially the same thing that we're looking at in this scene. But if I wanted to just, show this to the players or give them a way to access it anytime, I could do this. I could show it to the players. I could also click on this. This is a plugin that I've installed that makes it a little bit easier to share with the players. And then I could say, give observer permission on this handout, save it. And now this means that the players will actually see this in the journal sidebar, and they can easily pull this up anytime. There are also some rollable tables in here that come with the core game. So if I pull this up, a lot of them are for randomly rolling up mysteries, but there are also things that might be helpful during the game, like, say, NPC names, right? So if I quickly need to come up with a character, I'll pop out my chat here, and I'll roll on the male character table, and we get, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Trigve. Let's try a female character. There we have Karin. And there's a bunch of other tables as well. NPC traits, right? If I just want to quickly see what this person might, what their personality might be like. Okay, a stranger or considerate. Okay, that gives me some idea of who this person might be. So that's useful. Interesting locations, things like that. And of course, our injury tables. So during gameplay, your character might get into a broken state, and then they need to roll on this table, and they might get either a mental or a physical critical injury. So let's do a physical one. All right, they would be in a coma. So yeah, it's all right there at my fingertips, really easy to use. Let's quickly show off what combat might look like, even though it's not really the focus of the Vaesen game, but there's a high likelihood that they will get into that situation. So to not spoil too much for this adventure, I'm just going to add some animals here. So let's say They will be fighting. Let's do a badger. What the heck? Let's do a badger and an eagle. And then I'm going to add down here, I'm going to add Gunilla. So she has to fight off these two creatures. Go to my combat tracker. I'm going to select them all and add them to the combat tracker. So now they're up here. Vaesen uses a card-based initiative system. And these things are notoriously difficult to do online just because you require special support usually. So it's nice that it's all built in here. So I can just easily click on draw all. And the cards are just numbered 1 through 10. So with this, the badger would go first, the eagle, and then Gunilla. And now I can basically start the combat and then just keep cycling through it very easily. So they can take an action. There's also a way they can take a slow action and a fast action, so I can actually track that. Maybe the badger takes their slow action now, but they still have a fast action that that they can save for later. Oh, I should click on begin combat first. Right, so that happened, and then we can proceed to the next person, or the next character, which is the eagle. Let's say the eagle takes both of the actions. And we go over to Gunilla. Let's say Gunilla takes her slow action and attacks the badger, and the badger tries to dodge. That's the badger's fast action, so now the badger takes that. And then Gunilla maybe, does something else anyway. And now I can go back, and we're back at the badger again, and fast slow has reset. So this is going to be really nice and easy to use. I do want to mention one gripe that I have with Foundry, and that is the dependence on tokens. So let's get rid of these guys, right? And let's actually end this combat. Okay. So let's say we're actually not, let's say we're just, I'll pull up this island map, and let's say the players are doing something that doesn't have a specific scene or map or anything like that associated with it, right? I might just show something atmospheric, or I might just show nothing, right? It's really kind of a theater of the mind game. So that means, and a combat might still break out where the characters have to fight a creature or another human. And normally I would just want to run that theater of the mind. But in Foundry VTT, you cannot use the combat tracker without having tokens on the map. So I have to now, drag, say, this wild boar somewhere, and oh, sorry, that was outside of the map. I guess I have to drag it inside here, and then Gunilla, right? And then I have to select it and add it to the map. So it's not a huge deal, but it is a little bit ugly. I wish there was a way to just add the tokens directly to the combat tracker. So that kind of shows the roots of Foundry as much more D&D focused, right? Maps and dungeon crawling and stuff like that. So it works fine, but I wish they would not have that dependency on tokens. All right, next, let's take a look at Alchemy. Alchemy VTT is still relatively new, and it's under very active development. They ran a successful Kickstarter earlier this year, and Alchemy has a really interesting premise. Rather than focusing on tactical aspects like maps and tokens, Alchemy is all about cinematic immersion and theater of the mind. As someone that generally prefers to play using theater of the mind, that appeals to me. You can easily add scenes that capture the atmosphere of a location, perhaps add a drawing of a town, add a rain or fog overlay with some gentle sound effects in the background, that kind of thing. The core app is available now, and additional content is being gradually released over time. In fact, they just released Vaesen support last week, including the core game as well as the supplements, so I figured it's a perfect time to give it a shot and see if I might want to use this for my campaign instead of Foundry. So here we see the Vaesen default scene, and you can tell right away they've done a really cool job with the animations. Right, so this person's moving their lantern around, and there's some sort of creature in the back. There's a little bit of a fog and lighting effect going on. So that's actually really well done. Kind of sets the scene very well. And then we have scenes for each of the adventures. So this is where things get a little bit different from Foundry or maybe other VTTs you might have used. So let's take a look at the Silver of the Sea. By the way, in case you're a player in my game, there might be some mild spoilers here. So maybe skip this part of the video and take a look at it after we've played this upcoming mystery. All right. So I'm going to open up the Silver of the Sea. I'm going to click on play. And here we have that scene. So there's this mermaid. I hope my players aren't listening anymore. The secret, which is a little bit of something that I'm a little bit annoyed with, is that this is basically a giant spoiler, because it turns out that the Vaesen that's behind all the bad things that are going on in this mystery is a mermaid. So putting that in here is, it kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion. It looks cool, but there are other scenes that would have been much, much more appropriate to show here. So not a great choice, in my opinion. Another thing that Alchemy does differently is you can switch between tactical mode and this sort of regular mode here. And it's a little bit weird. So if I go to tactical mode, normally this is where I would expect to see like a battle map or something. And again, Vaesen isn't really that kind of game. But, oops, sorry, how do I move this? Here we go. But here, this is basically where they've hidden the overview maps. To me, those are scenes like any other, right? So it's a little bit weird that it's in the tactical mode. And then, let's see, is it just this one, or is there another one that I can look at? I'm still figuring out a little bit how to navigate this. I think this might be the only one. So I can basically toggle. Okay, here we go. So they have them under map phases. I assume that this is something that you would normally use, say, in a D&D battle map where you could have a day and a night version or something. But they've basically used that mechanism here to cycle through different maps. So there's the Wrecker Isle map that we looked at earlier, and the inn. So it's a little bit weird. In my opinion, it kind of shows a kind of a hole in the information architecture that is underlying the whole Alchemy VTT system, if I'm being honest. It's not a big deal. You can probably work around it. It's just a little bit awkward. So I would much prefer like a folder system or something like we had in Foundry, right? Where you can have a folder for the mystery and then all kinds of scenes in there, whether the scene happens to show a creature or a map or whatever. It should be kind of agnostic to that. So this feels a little bit weird. Let's go back to our story mode for now. Let's take a look at our NPCs. So as you can tell, here are the same NPCs that are part of that story. I can easily open up our generic sailor archetype. Well, actually, not as easily as you might expect. So this is another gripe, to be honest, that I have with Alchemy. So I can click on the sailor. Rather than being able to open them from here, I have to go down here where this other kind of context menu opened and click on view or something like that. So there's a lot of like moving back and forth, which seems like a fairly cumbersome user experience, to be honest. But yeah, once you do that, you can see the sailor. So here's the character sheet with their attributes and skills and stuff. Let's look at another one, say Orvar, the fisherman. I am realizing I can also right-click and view, which gets me around that problem. It's still a little bit of a funky UI, to be honest. But okay, that works. So there's Orvar. What I can do now, or actually have to do now, right? I can't just do a roll from here. So say Orvar wants to bash in a door, and I want to have him roll on force. I can't do that. Instead, what I need to do is, let's see. Yeah, so I have to right-click him or left-click him, and then down here choose play. So I can basically only play one character at a time. Now I'm playing Orvar. This is also what it would look like for a player character. The way it works, which is kind of an interesting idea. Rather than having this character sheet, they basically give you all the things that this character can do directly in this interface here, right? So you don't have to have this thing in front of you. So for example, I see Orvar has his skills and actions. These would be, you know, maybe if they have certain weapons or something like that, other equipment. Okay. So let's say Orvar wants to do this force check. Now I can click on it here. Now this is the same kind of UX issue again, right? So if I click on it, it doesn't do anything. I have to go down here and then click on check. Presumably I can right click and do check here, but it's a bit of a funky UX if you ask me. So I click check. Here's my 2 dice and I have 3 successes. That seems pretty good. I want to actually see what dice I've rolled. Okay, I can click on that and I get, wow, I rolled 3 6s and a 4 and a 2. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's try if I can get a failed roll. So let's have him roll on medicine, maybe. Okay, he's pretty good at this. Let's try stealth. How about that? All right, well, like the moment you want to fail, you just keep succeeding. I wish it was like that in the game. Let's do an investigation check. Okay, so now there are no successes. It's a little bit weird, by the way it shows up. It shows successes and other. I think the game is making, I think the system, I noticed this earlier, is making the wrong assumption that a 6 is a success and a 1 is a failure and everything in between is other. That's not really how it works. It's just there's successes and that's that. So anyway, just a little cosmetic thing, but hopefully something they can fix in the future. Anyways, he does not have any successes right now. So can I re-roll this? Okay, so that does work. And now I would just need to track somewhere that he's now taken a condition, right? Because he re-rolled. Another thing that I find a little bit more cumbersome here is that, you know, I only easily have access to these NPCs that are part of this specific scene. So it's all kind of on a per scene basis. So let's say, you know, I want to have the party suddenly be attacked by an eagle, maybe because somebody performed some magic, right, and made this eagle attack the party. I would have to go to add NPC, and I would have to search through these templates. And actually, it looks like they didn't add any of the animals. So if I search for eagle, oops, I'm sorry, that was a typo. So if I search for eagle, there's actually nothing there. Same with bear or any of the others. How about a soldier? Right. Those generic animals and humans, they don't seem to have added them here as part of the content. So that's a little bit unfortunate. The Vaesen are in here. So if we wanted to suddenly have a troll come up, but that's usually not something that would happen ad hoc. That's something that would tend to be more planned ahead. But if I search for a troll, sure enough, there's the troll. I can click on add, confirm. Now it's creating a troll and it shows up down here. And then again, I could, you know, now play as the troll. So it's all like a little bit too many clicks and just feels weird from an information architecture perspective. I'm not gonna do a full combat here. I actually can't figure out how to add player characters as a GM. Maybe there's a way, maybe not, I'm not sure. But it's not super intuitive to me. I want to click through a couple more things. If I go to story, this is sort of the explanation of the mystery, which is, it's nice to have it easily accessible, but I think the color choice is just really horrible. This kind of yellowish font on this green background, it's not really legible for me, to be honest. So that basically makes it fairly useless. Even the dice up here, I think the contrast here could be a lot better. So yeah, that's something that should be fixed. What else can I do in here? Okay, there's handouts. So I can, and again, it's the same thing, right? I click on it and then I have to click down here on view, or presumably right-click it. But there's the letter, and I'm guessing there's probably some way to show it to the characters. It is nice that they have this version here. That's a lot easier to read than the image-based one. So what's my first impression here? To be honest, I am a little bit disappointed. In terms of Alchemy itself, part of it might just be my inexperience with it, and the fact that its UI is very different from what might be considered the norm. It's entirely possible that I'd warm up to it over time. But some design choices stand out to me as fundamental user experience issues. The fact that I often have to click on the bottom to confirm an action requires a lot of mouse movement. It's unintuitive and not user-friendly. The whole play as character feature seems odd as a GM. I shouldn't really have to jump through so many hoops to make a roll on behalf of one of the NPCs. And then let's talk about the actual Vaesen support. The system is still under development, I think, so there's a few things being fixed around rerolls and so on, but I believe that's coming soon. I think they only recently added support for dice pool systems in general, so that's all still a little bit fresh. I was pretty disappointed with the actual mystery content. The fact that there's only a single scene per mystery, and that the picture is on it as a major spoiler, that just seems odd. I would have liked to see it actually deliver on Alchemy's premise by including atmospheric scenes of key locations, such as the inn with tavern sounds in the background, or maybe a scene on the docks, or an island shore, maybe the town, etc. Right? So I could, of course, add those myself, and I might experiment with that in a second. But that's not really the point when I'm purchasing content, right? I expect it to play to Alchemy's strengths, to really deliver on what this VTT is trying to do. So that feels like a missed opportunity. To be fair, there are some interesting scenes in here that come with the core system, or the core book content, not the adventures, right? So I showed the one at the beginning. Let's open another one, like Creepy Hollow. So, okay, there's some birds and some dust flying around. This one is actually really neat. The Gates of Vaesen Manor. So that's the castle, and the door is kind of moving in this sort of pseudo 3D effect. So that's pretty nice and atmospheric. I probably wouldn't do much with this, beyond maybe showing it once, or this one I guess I could show while some part of the story happens at the castle, maybe at the beginning when they're getting ready to head out, right? But a lot of these, they're doing a good job showing off some of the features, but they're not really that useful in and of themselves. They're like for a very specific scene, like this one, the aberration, and it's like showing a specific Vaesen on there. So yeah, again, it's showcasing what Alchemy can do, but I wish they had actually incorporated some of those techniques into the actual content for the mysteries. I think if the content actually captured the strengths of the Alchemy VTT, that might just give it enough of an edge to sway me to use it, even if the UX feels a bit funky. But as it stands, it doesn't seem to do anything better than the Foundry version, and given the rough edges, unfortunately I can't recommend using it just yet. I recognize that this might seem like an unfair comparison. After all, the Foundry version of the Vaesen content does not include any artwork and such outside of what's in the original book either. But in a way, Alchemy is a different medium, and I think its content requires more fidelity to embrace its premise. And while I can fill in these gaps myself, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect the purchased content to be ready to run and to deliver the full Alchemy experience. So I do hope that that experience gets better over time and that they revisit some of the UX issues. I also hope that future content packs actually maybe are a little bit more sophisticated in that sense. So I will continue to keep an eye on it. I do want to try one thing real quick before we leave Alchemy, and that is to create my own scene. So let me try that. Add scene. I'm going to click on create scene. I'm going to call it docks. Location. Docks, I guess. Okay, I see. The visual is a background image. So I'm going to load an image that I created earlier with DALL-E 3, just a scene at the docks. So let's click on select. Okay, upload. All right, there's my scene at the docks. And now let's see what we can do to make it interesting. There's motion effects, music, ambient sound, encounter music, encounter ambience. All right, so let's see what we can do with motion effects. We could do some wind, snow. Oh, see, there's a tavern. See, so why didn't they include the tavern scene and just put the tavern effect in the background? Rain could be fun. Let's see what this scene looks like with some rain. See, now we got some rain up there, so that's that could be fun. So let's just actually fog would be maybe even better. So I search for fog. Okay, yeah, that's kind of nice. The fog sort of swirling around the ocean. Let's do that. Too bad I can't layer them, have like fog and rain, but that's reasonable. I don't actually like music typically in my games. Ambient sound. Okay, this isn't very helpful. Vaesen layer A, B, C. Okay. Creepy hollow graveyard. All right, I'm gonna just skip this and not put any sound on it. And just hit OK. And now we can activate this dock scene. Okay, so that's pretty neat, but to be honest, it's not that difficult to do in Foundry either, to have a scene and put some rain on it or something like that. That's actually pretty easy. So that alone isn't enough to get me to use it, but yeah, it is pretty nice. I'll briefly mention that there are a couple of other VTTs that support Vaesen. I took a look at Roll20. It looks like there's no official Vaesen content or anything like that, but there is a Vaesen character sheet that you can use. So try it out. If you're a Roll20 user, chances are it'll work just fine for you, but you will need to add all the content yourself. So that will require a little bit of work, handouts and NPCs and creatures and things like that. There is official support for Fantasy Grounds as well. I haven't tried this myself. I don't own the content for Fantasy Grounds, but based on what I've seen, this looks very solid. So if you're a Fantasy Grounds user, this feels like a no-brainer to pick it up there and use it. Finally, though, I want to also talk about the non-VTT option. So what I typically do is play using Google Sheets for character sheets, and then Discord with a dice bot for dice rolling, and of course voice and video. And that works really well for most Theater of the Mind games. So I just quickly did a search earlier and was able to find a couple of Google Sheets-based Vaesen character sheets. So here's one of them that I found. It actually looks quite nice. The layout is maybe a little bit wide, so if I had a narrower monitor, that wouldn't be ideal. But it should be simple enough to rearrange this or come up with something of your own. It's very well done though. So for example, there's a drop down here for the archetype or for the age group, and then the conditions work as well. So say my character is wounded, it will now automatically add a -1 to all of my physical abilities. Or let's say they are both angry and frightened. Now I have -2 on my mental skills. So some nice little convenience features, and it's an easy enough system, right? All I need to do normally is understand how many dice to roll. And that's all there is. So if I had logic at a 4, and let's say I had investigation at 3, but then because of this -2, I end up with a 5 total, right? So this is really all I need to look at, nice and easy. And now I just need to roll dice. So for that, I'm going to switch over to Discord, which I'm going to use as my dice roller. There are actually a couple of options here that I found One is I'm a fan of the Roll-M dice bot that I mentioned in my previous video, and really for the most part that's all you need. Say I wanted to do that investigation skill check and I end up with 5 dice, I could really just do 5d6. Oh, sorry, I typed in 66, but you get the idea. And then it just shows me the dice rolls. In this case, I can easily eyeball. I have 2 successes, and that's that, right? Nothing fancy needed for the system. That should work really well. I did come across a more sophisticated dice bot specifically for the Year Zero games. And there are some things that it does that might make it worth it. That is this one up here. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sebedius. I no idea, but that one. Let me demo what that looks like. So I'll do roll. You see all the different Year Zero systems in there, Alien, Blade Runner, and so on. So I have to do roll Vaesen, and then I say 5 for 5 dice. So it gives me this nice presentation. It suppresses all the faces, all the die faces that are not successes. So in this case, I can easily eyeball there's 1 success. And so that's kind of nice. Let's say 1 success is enough. I can hit accept. But let's do another roll, and hopefully we get, let's do 3 dice, see if maybe, okay, there's still a success. Well, actually that's fine. Let's say I need 2 successes in this case, because it's a particularly difficult situation. I have the option right here to push the roll. So that's the part that's kind of nice about this bot. So if I do that, it should keep the 1 success and then re-roll the other 2 to see if I get an additional 1. In this case, I didn't, so I still only end up with 1 success total. So that's kind of nice. Other things you can do in here are you can do a crit. Let's say I'm mentally broken, so I can do that roll. And I am now paralyzed. And it tells me that this means I lack initiative. My investigation is -1. So that's kind of nice to have directly here in one place. You can also just roll a straight up D66, which often comes up in Vaesen. So I think that's roll D66. There we go. Right, so there I get a 12. And then there are also features for handling initiative. I found it a little bit cumbersome, but I could, as a player, if I wanted to draw my initiative card, I can do initiative draw. I got a 2. The next player could do their draw. It shows you on the remaining cards, right? The 2 is now gone. So all draws will basically take away from this set of 10 until eventually I need to reshuffle by doing initiative reset. So it's actually kind of nice. And then the other thing I need to solve is handouts. And those I could just easily paste into Discord, right? So say I have this invitation letter to introduce the mystery. I can just paste that image in here. Players can click on it. It might not be super readable. That's mostly because of the way it's presented in the book. But it'll be easier with maps and other things like that. So this would work just fine. Okay, so what option am I going with? Vaesen isn't a tactical, combat-oriented RPG. Its combat, when it does happen, lends itself to theater of the mind. So for the most part, I really just need character sheets and a dice roller. This means that the last option I showed, i.e. Discord with a dice bot and Google Sheets, would really be all I need. However, I think that Foundry does strike a nice sweet spot here, especially because all the content is available and easily accessible within the game. The character sheets are all highly usable as well. So that's my plan for now. In case we end up running into any issues, I can easily fall back to Discord and Google Sheets. I'd really love to give Alchemy a try in the future, so I will keep an eye on it and see how it evolves. Well, that's it for now. By the way, some friends of mine published a great overview of Vaesen with a lot of useful tips for GMs that are interested in running it. You can find it on the How to RPG channel, and I'll toss a link into the video description for you. If you've played or run Vaesen online yourself, why don't you leave a comment to let me know what tools you use to facilitate this? As always, likes and subscribes would be appreciated as well. Thank you and see you next time.